All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll get started with our webinar for today. Thanks for joining us. This is our GrowON webinar series put on by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. I'm your host for today, Dr. Siobhan Dayball. I'm the Greenhouse Floriculture Specialist with my OMAFRA. My co-host today is Dr. Fadi Al-Dood. He's the Greenhouse Vegetable Specialist with OMAFRA, and he'll be moderating the question session for today. If you haven't joined us for a webinar before, we do our best to bring you timely topics that you might be looking for in the greenhouse and controlled environment agriculture space. We talk about topics ranging from automation, IPM, new technology, disease management, and everything in between. You can find our latest webinars advertised on our blogs, or you can follow us on LinkedIn to find more information there. So let's get right into today's topic, looking at phosphorus and cannabis. Our speaker for today is Bill MacDonald. Bill is a professor and coordinator of the Commercial Cannabis Production Program at Niagara College. Prior to joining Niagara College, Bill owned and managed greenhouses ranging in size from 1 to 10 acres. For the last 8 years, Bill has served the industry through his consulting company, Asheen Consulting. Bill has both a Bachelor of Science degree and a Master's of Science degree from the University of Guelph in plant nutrition. He's also special graduate faculty at the University of Guelph. Bill's got lots of stuff going on. He's a busy guy. Bill believes in hands-on learning and has advocated for Niagara College to get the program in cannabis production. In September 2018, Niagara College became the first post-secondary institution in Canada to obtain a Health Canada license specifically to grow cannabis for the purpose of training students to join the sector. Welcome, Bill.
Hello. I'll unmute and hello, everybody.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here with us today. I'm going to try something new today that I haven't done before in a webinar. I'm going to ask a poll just so that we know who's in the audience for you to talk to. So we have 2 questions in our poll today, and you should see it pop up on your screen. So we want to know, what's your occupation and how much experience do you have with cannabis production? So you might consider yourself an expert, a bit of a newbie. You might be one of Bill's students and you're just interested in learning more from your professor. Perfect. Yeah, so it looks like we've got lots of experienced people in the room here, Bill, with 5+ years experience, or they might consider themselves an expert in cannabis production. But they're looking to you to get some more information about nutrition and cannabis. Awesome. All right. So Bill, do you want to share your screen and we'll let you take it away?
All righty. All right. So as long as everybody can hear me, that's good. Yeah, as Siobhan said, I spent my whole life as a grower. Started way back when I was 15, 1902. And we're really mostly in the floriculture industry, and then cannabis starting back in 2013 when Barry Shelp at University of Guelph, who I did my master's with, asked me to help perhaps getting a licensed producer together. So been working in that. And as Siobhan said, I went to Niagara College. Let's see. Oh, I always have to use this. Can you see a pointer, or can I use a pen? Let's see, I just want to see if a pen. Oh, I got a pen. Okay, there we go. I always like to use this. This is me rocking my 1980s sweater at Davis Greenhouses in London, where I first started working in high school and through university. And then after graduating, I did that as well. Let's see, can I see the chat? No. All right. Yeah, so, and here I am presently. Of course, everybody in the cannabis industry always loves to get themselves a picture with the biggest cannabis plant they can. There's been bigger, but that's in our lab there. So that's a little about myself. And yeah, just want to go a little bit on what we're doing at Niagara College. We grow in specialized shipping containers. And so there's actually 3 different containers along the front. That's for storage and HVAC there. And yeah, I went to Niagara College and said, we need to start a cannabis program because that's totally changing the greenhouse industry. And they said yes, and I fell on the floor. I went, really? And so, yeah, and we went to Health Canada and said, we want a license to do this. And they said, no, we don't do that. Sorry, go away. And so a lot of backdoor politicking and such. We first off got a Section 56 exemption on the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act for our first year. And now we have a research license. And we're growing, doing research. Our primary goal is students. What I really like doing is course-based research, where the students are totally involved in all aspects of the research. It's very hands-on, very practical. What we're doing, like here, I've done a few of these, and this is a nutrient deficiency trial, where we'll do NPK. We've done calcium, magnesium, sulfur. And the very first time I did, I thought I'd do them all. I did NPK, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, and all the micros as well. I don't do that anymore. We just pick 3 and do that. Great learning experience for the students. And mostly we're doing this with industry partners. And so this is working inside our, we call our canna bunker. And students are in there hands-on, learning how to grow cannabis, trimming the plants, and also doing course-based research. We just installed what we call our canna research bunker, a new 40-foot bunker that just got going this past fall. Sebastian Jacob is doing some pest control trials in there right now. So yeah, that's really a little bit of background on what we're doing at Niagara College. It's primarily teaching, getting students in to learn cannabis production. I'd have to say it sort of prefaces what I'm going to talk about today. Is when I first started consulting in the industry, what I found was you had, just a sec, there we go. So you had cannabis growers and you had traditional vegetable or floriculture growers, and neither would talk to each other. All the cannabis growers thought the floriculture growers knew nothing about cannabis, and all the floriculture greenhouse veggie growers thought these were a bunch of stoners, and the two, they didn't come together. And I think that, and if you read any of the news right now and you see all the closures, like Canopy 2 days ago just laid off another 250 people, closed their 1 million square feet in Niagara Lake. I would say with a lot of them, they just ignored basic horticulture and basic agriculture, and whatever the newest shiny thing was, that's what they went for and bought and overpaid for, instead of just looking at, what's the good basis of growing. So that's really what we're doing in there. It's basic growing techniques. Sebastian really gets into the pathology, IPM. I get into the nutrition and lighting, and really environmental controls to teach the students what is it to do, what you do in controlled environment growing. So now back to our topic, phosphorus and cannabis, and how much is enough? So what I have found, I'm just going to move this screen around a little bit. You go on the internet, and just being out in the industry consulting, there's this whole dogma that you need high phosphorus when you're flowering. And this is from Zemnesia. And what they're saying is during bloom, when vegetative growth comes to a halt, cannabis will require increased levels of phosphorus and potassium while needing only little nitrogen. And then you get Green Rush Packaging on their blog. In flowering, you need a 525 or 52510. During flowering, you need to prioritize phosphorus to promote bud growth and make sure to limit nitrogen so your plant doesn't get too tall or laggy. Go to maximum yield site, where they say phosphorus is largely associated with the flowering phase of the plant. Fast-growing annuals require large amounts of phosphorus, producing large flowers and fruit. This is why flowering fertilizers and bloom booster supplements have a high relative content of phosphorus. Why? Is there any basis to this? Not that I found. There seems to be a dogma out there that this is what you have to do, but I think this is not strictly in the cannabis industry, that in a lot of growing in general, and field growing as well, is phosphorus tends to have been over applied, and environmentally, it can cause damage in the environment. You can cause algae blooms and such. So there's been a lot of concentration on phosphorus and and how much is needed. Before, when we used to have lots of phosphorus fertilizer, and it was fairly cheap, especially in field production, how did you get over phosphate fixation? Because in mineral soils, you get phosphate fixation. At high pH, it'll fix with calcium, low pH with iron and aluminum. How do you get over that? Well, let's just put extra on. And that worked until you get erosion, and then that soil ends up in Lake Erie or whatever. So, and there's just been, and don't get me started, my students will always say, well, phosphorus is for root growth, right? That's why we need 10-52-10. And I start frothing in the mouth at something like that and say, okay, let's run a trial. And we have low phosphorus. And guess what? With a low phosphorus, you get more root growth. So it's sort of like phosphorus needs to be put on a psychiatrist's couch and say, I misunderstood. I just totally misunderstood. So what I'm going to do in this webinar is go through a little bit of research that we've done at the college, some research out of Israel, and some research that Yuban Zhang has done. And because that's the one thing that a pet peeve, that you get a lot of papers published, and then in these scientific journals, does it actually get to the end user? So we know it's an essential macronutrient. Phosphorus is essential macronutrient. It's a key element in nucleic acids, essential in energy transport, good old ATP. That's where you get your energy from. And so you get your inorganic phosphate going in. It phosphorylizes ADP to ATP, and that gives you your energy. It affects biosynthetic pathways, and it's also a mobile element, meaning it's flow mobile. It can move within the plant. So that's sort of the standard phosphorus talk of what phosphorus does. Okay. But the whole thing is, how much do we really need? You know, as I said, you go to any website and they'll say phosphorus is for flowering. And it's sort of like I start frothing at the mouth when people say phosphorus is for root growth. So, I might be giving away the end here. Phosphorus is needed for so much in the plant. And to start to say, oh, it's just for this or just for this. No. So what I have done is I got one of those typical that you buy at the hydroponic store, where you have your 3 different liquid feeds, you mix them up, and you've got for veg, transition, and also for flowering. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have these and mix them up and see how they go, because you can buy these at any hydroponic store. But what shocks me is the number of large LPs actually using this and buying it in 55-gallon drums when you can mix your own. Okay, I diverge. Try not to. So I analyzed, I mixed it up, sent it off to SGS Labs and said, here, let's get this analyzed. So first off, in what they're calling for mild vegetative, they're around 45 ppm phosphorus, which is about 1.5 millimolar for mild vegetative growth. If you're going to aggressive vegetative growth, then you're at 65 ppm and a little over 2 millimolar. Then when you start to transition from vegetative to flowering, you're up to about 92 ppm phosphorus, which is about 3 millimolar. And this is strictly going, I just mixed these up exactly by the feed charts and thought, okay, let's go through this. Can you grow good cannabis plants using these? Yes. And I find most of their ratios of their fertilizers are quite good. I don't really have a problem with a lot of them, except I do have a bit of a problem with phosphorus, because now what they're saying for bloom and finishing, you should be 100, you're going to be, you mix it up according to their tables, 121 ppm, 4 millimolar. Okay, so that's where we're headed to with using these feed charts, which, like I say, I'm shocked at the number of license holders that are actually using these when you could make your own for a hundredth of the cost. Okay, so this is what you're seeing. So mild vegetative 45 ppm, 65, 91, 122. See a trend? Of course we do. Big thing is this needed? We're increasing our phosphorus all the way along because there's this dogma saying you need extra phosphorus for bloom. So we did a small little trial. We took Cold Creek Kush clones, planted them in deep water culture buckets. Vegetative 6 week, reproductive 6 weeks. And everybody's going, why the hell did you do 6 weeks and not finish them off? Can you say COVID? We all got kicked out. So we're going along and things are going well. College closed down and students, myself included, couldn't go in. And our technologist, Laurie Zuber, she had to finish it off. We actually ended early. We still got some really good results. So just saying, that's why reproductive only went for 6 weeks. What we did was 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 millimolar. So just so you know, 1 millimolar is like 30 ppm. And usually when I'm growing, we're usually around 2.5, maybe 2.5 millimolar of phosphate. we had 3 plants per treatment, and our standard solution was 11 millimolar nitrate, sulfates 2.25. The ammonium I didn't have in there, but I happen to know it's 0.8 millimolar. 5 millimolar potassium, calcium 4.1, and magnesium 2 millimolar plus all the micronutrients. So what I wanted to see was, okay, let's go higher than normal and lower than normal, and let's see, how our plants do. Because like I said at the beginning, normally we're feeding more phosphorus than we need to. So there's when we finished our plants, 6 weeks into flower, and there's that 0.5 millimolar, 15.5 ppm. Beautiful looking plants. The roots were nice, the plants were great. 1.5 millimolar, 31 ppm. Again, I don't really see much difference between that. 2.5 millimolar, 75 ppm. Then we got up to 3.5, 108 ppm, which if you remember, if you go back to, I'm really trying not to say the company that I mixed up, in their bloom finish, they were at 121 ppm of phosphorus. So just looking at these, we really didn't see much difference. Height, very little difference. Actually, our 1.5 was a little higher, not statistically different though. So like I said, little statistically different than the 3.5. You can see our error bars don't overlap. So it was a little taller than our 3.5 millimolar plant. Root dry weight. Again, it was actually our 0.5 millimolar had the greatest root dry weight. And that's, again, is why I start frothing when people say, well, you got to have 1052, 10 for root growth. If anything, when you're of a deficiency, phosphorus or nitrogen especially, you actually get more root growth because the plant is pre-programmed trying to go out and intercept more of this nutrient. So we actually ended up with the lowest root dry weight in our 3.5 millimolar. And it actually was statistically different than our 0.5. This I was really surprised at. I want to first off caution, I don't want to say that, oh, if you grow at 3.5 millimolar phosphorus, that's toxic, it's too high. I want to run this again. I'm surprised, but you can see the trend that our 3.5 millimolar phosphorus actually ended up plant dry weight less. And this is plant dry weight, not inflorescence. This is the cutoff at the root, the full plant. And we'll run it again and we'll do inflorescence as well, because of course that's in cannabis, that's when you're growing. But you can see again, we had our greatest growth at 1.5, about 45 ppm. And then it dropped, and we did have statistically significantly less dry weight with 3.5. Again, I just don't want anybody to interpret this as, oh, that's phosphate toxicity or anything like that. We just didn't get the result. And instead of having more growth at 3.5, we actually had less. Please don't read too much into this. I'm going to run it again. It's just like what happened with the bedding plants. When a lot of growers started taking out phosphorus when growing bedding plants and to reduce stretch, and then we got into a lot of phosphate deficiencies. So everything in moderation. So that's the thing. But the big thing is we really didn't see a difference between the plants, whether we grow them at 0.5 or 3.5 of phosphate. So pretty much didn't see a difference. But the 3.5 was a smaller plant. So in this case, more is not better. less is actually better. So that's what we found. And then there's some very interesting papers out there. This, I just have to keep moving my little thing around. So this is an open access article. So I read all of the sharing in that. So I can share this because I don't want my students say that's plagiarism. You caught me for plagiarism. So I'm making sure that I'm giving full credit. This is and I'm just scratching the surface on this. If you could find this, it's open access. Just Google the title of this, and it's all available online. The highs and lows of phosphorus supply in medical cannabis, effects on cannabinoids, the iome, and morphophysiology. It just came out last year, 2021. So what they did, and I really find this interesting. I'd really recommend anybody interested in phosphorus, read this. And this lab, they have done other work on nitrogen as well. So they took two cultivars, Royal Medic and Desert Queen. So they had two chemotypes, high THC and low CBD, which was the Desert Queen, and balanced between the two, the Royal Medic with the balanced THC and CBD. So they have 5 treatments, 5, 15, 30, 60, 90 ppm of phosphorus. That relates to 0.16, 0.48, 1, 2, and 3 millimolar. They had 5 weeks vegetative and 9 weeks of reproductive. So what they want to do was go from the low end to the high end. And in our trial, in the picture, we pretty much ran from this. We ran from 0.5 up to 3.5. Interesting results, what they got in this. So first off, all right. So what this is showing is, first off down here, here's your days from transplanting, and here's your 2 different cultivars. Okay, you can see with the 5 ppm, it was a smaller plant, it had less nodes, smaller stem diameter. And 15 in the Royal Medic, it was very similar to your 30, 60, and 90 in plant height, not so much in nodes and stem diameter. And the DQ, Desert Queen. Desert Queen, your plant height, it was very similar in your 5 and 15, but then no difference from your 30 to 90. Very similar with number of nodes and stem diameter. So it didn't grow as big when it had the 5 or 15, but at 30, 60, and 90, pretty much the same as far as height, number of nodes, stem diameter, and your elongation rate was a little less when it was 5 ppm, not a lot less on your Desert Queen. And so then they also looked at, okay, this is showing a little different. Here's your phosphate concentration along the bottom. And again, they did 5, 15, 30, 60, and 90. Okay, so here's your 5 ppm. And so you can see with that, this is your total dry weight, is your gray circles. It's your plant's not growing as much. And the same with your Desert Queen. Is it being affected? Most definitely. At the 15, it's come up a little more. Once you hit 30, here's 30. There's your 30 ppm. here's your 30 ppm. Especially your Desert Queen, your total dry weight per plant really didn't make any difference. What you really want is your inflorescence. This is here. Your inflorescence made no difference above 30 ppm. Same thing with your Royal Medic. You can see it went up a little, but statistically not different at all. So on here, above 30, and look at your inflorescence, that's what you care about. When you're growing cannabis, that's what you care about, because that's what's making you money. So really showing, and this is what the authors noted, because they said biomass increased up to 30 ppm. 1 millimolar, 30 ppm. And remembering back to that solution by the hydroponic store and a lot of licensed producers are using, they're saying you need 120. This is a quarter of that. So I just find this very fascinating, that how 30 ppm, it seems to be the limit here. Here's where they had some visual. And I'm just trying to find there's my mouse. So basically, as you can see on the last graph, 5 and 15 ppm is too low. And they were getting some deficiencies. When we did a 0.5, we did not see deficiencies like that, but then we didn't go all the way to inflorescence. But above 30, there's the Desert Queen, Royal Medic, and just visually, there's really not much of a difference, and in inflorescence as well. So it really seemed to be right around 30 is what they found was sufficient, and not just sufficient. It's, you're getting the product that you need. You're not dropping off. It's not like, well, 30 is okay, we're going to save some money. It's really not making any difference going above 30. Similar to our results, that say they were at 30, we're at 15, they were getting deficiency. We were not. And this is just mostly on a vegetative, and we grew them long vegetatively. I was actually trying to, why I did such a long vegetative on these, I was actually trying to see deficiency. I thought, okay, let's get these plants really big. Let's grow them a long time vegetatively. I want to see, I really thought we'd get some deficiencies at 0.5. We didn't even see it at 0.5. So on ours, yes, we should go all the way, and I'll do it again up to flowering, but we didn't find deficiency there. So this is interesting. In this same article, where they found, and here's the percent CBDA and THCA. As you know, that's what cannabis plants, that's the acidic form of THC and CBD. And that it needs to be heated, and to get it into the active form, THC, CBD, that's what the plants produce. And what they found, as you increased the amount of phosphorus, your percent of the cannabinoids dropped from 10% to 8%. And here at a lower level, you went from, again, 10% up to your 30, about a 2% drop. Not as much of a drop in the Desert Queen. But they did find that as you increase the phosphorus, you had lower percentage of CBD and THCA. But of course, the big thing is, it's like we've done trials comparing conventional and organic, or our organic trials, they come in about 2% higher in THC, but the total mass is lower. So what they are finding as well, so in this figure, what they found, this is the cannabinoid yield per plant. So how much are you getting per plant? Sure, you're getting a higher amount, a higher percentage of CBD and THCA, but your biomass is less. And where do we land again? 30%. So landing on that, not 30%, sorry, 30 ppm, 1 millimole. That seemed to be where you're getting your most cannabinoids per plant. And the whole thing is it a dilution effect? And what I mean by dilution effect, yes, you're going to get a higher percentage of CBDA and THCA, but is it just because your plants and your inflorescence is smaller biomass? And with higher phosphorus concentration up to the 30 ppm, then you're getting higher biomass and you're still getting a fairly good THC level, because the whole thing is, sure, okay, I'm going to get 2% more THC, but my bud's so small, well, I'm not going to make any money. So, but they are finding what it seems to be falling into is that 30 ppm range. And for everybody who knows statistics, if you have the same letter, they're not statistically different. That's an AB and that's an A, so that's not statistically different. And same here, those are not statistically different between 30 and 90. And again, we have our A, B, and there's an A there, and an A. Not statistically different, meaning there isn't a difference going above that. I'm actually not going to go into the CBD, V, and A. You can see here we are getting a little bit of a difference in that, but not here. How are you getting paid by the OCS? Right there. What's the magic number? 25%. So I'm not ever going to recommend that you starve your plants of phosphorus, get a higher THC level so you can get it into the OCS at that magical 25%. But it seems to fall in around, from their data, around the 30 ppm. And so that's what they found as well. So here's their what they discussed. They found a reduction in concentration, most tested cannabinoids, with an increase of phosphorus. And as I said, is this dilution effect, more biomass produced and with increased phosphorus concentration. And as they said, although the concentration of many cannabinoids, THCA and CBDA, reduce, the amount of cannabinoids increase with phosphorus. And they're suggesting that 30 milligrams per liter, that's ppm, in the Desert Queen, and 30 to 90 in the Royal Medic, corresponds to 1 to 3 millimolar. And of course, there's a genotypic response. One size does not fit all. They're finding the genotypic, the cultivar response, but they're saying somewhere in the 30 to 90 ppm. Then you go to this paper, again, just published last year, optimization, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium for soilless production of cannabis sativa at the flowering stage using response surface analysis. And I likely say this name wrong, Luz, Bevan, Bax Jones, and Yuban Zhang. And again, another open access article. Google that and spend tonight with a beer reading that or something else. Okay, just what they were saying in this. And they found, so what they were doing again, I believe they did 20, 40, 60, 80. I'd have to see. Again, they did different response levels of nitrogen and phosphorus. I'm not going to go through all of their paper, but what they found is the estimated highest average yield, they had 144 grams, would be achieved with nitrogen and phosphorus at 194 and 59 milligrams per liter or 59 ppm. In their paper, they didn't find a difference in cannabinoid content with varying levels. Why I picked up this paper, it very much agrees with and is very similar to Schiapone and Bernstein's paper, because they were in the 30 to 90, and Eubin's paper, Eubin's group, falls right in there with 60. So a little recap. Schiapone and Bernstein, here they said biomass increased up to 30 ppm in the Desert Queen, 30 to 90 in the Royal Medic. Eubin's group found it around 60. What we did, we went from 15 to 77.5, and we actually had to reduce biomass. We went higher than all of it, 100, 108. So really seems that the ideal range, 30 to 90. Myself, I would suggest likely the lower range, 30 to 60 milligrams, which is 1 to 2 millimolar, is likely best in terms of yield and cannabis. And from our work at the college, from Schiapone and Eubin's group, we're all landing in that same area. So can we say goodbye to increasing levels of flowering? There isn't the scientific backing of this to say, oh, we start low and then go high. Start low and go slow. That's what you do in cannabis when consuming, maybe not in growing. So here, as you can see, let's even go with the aggressive veg. They're at 65, and they're going up to 122 ppm, 4 millimolar. Why? I honestly don't know. It's one of these things that's just been ingrained in there that seems to be, you have to have 5 phosphorus. The data is saying you should be landing more somewhere in there. So just to sum up here, phosphorus, one thing, is highly mobile on the plant. It moves, it's flow mobile. And so if it needs to be remobilized, translocated from one area of the plant, it can do that. And plants will remobilize it. Take it out of where it's stored, a lot of times stored in the vacuole, and move it from there. Phosphorus fed in the vegetative stage can be stored and remobilized for later use. Thus, no need to start increasing phosphorus levels at flowering. There just does not seem to be scientific reasoning for this. And if you can reduce your phosphorus, is going to save you money? Somewhat. I'm not here saying, but environmentally, if you're having to recycle and such, and you're not having to deal with something like that, and you're likely going to end up with a better plant because it really is showing that's the levels you likely should be at. And back with Barry Schultz's group, which I've been working with, that's where I do the special graduate work, is I get to read theses. And they found, and this is where I originally started with moms back in 1990, is can you reduce nitrogen and get them remobilized more? And when they repeated basically a lot of my work with phosphorus, they were finding they could produce market quality chrysanthemums at 1.3 millimolar phosphorus. And they just fed it in the vegetative state only and relied on remobilization. So the really big thing is, and this is happening in all agriculture, all horticulture, is, okay, we have to dial in how much phosphorus we use. And I'll go back here. If I'm going to make a recommendation, the 1 to 2 millimolar, if you're going up to 3 millimolar, 90, you may have to do that on some cultivars because that's what the group in Israel found. A lot of times when we're working in our bunker, I'm in 2.5 millimolar. Usually I won't go up to 3, and we're getting, good results. So that's my little presentation today. I have to thank Laurie Zuber, our technologist. She had to collect all the data and pictures for the phosphorus trial when we all got kicked out, locked out of the bunker, and she was all by herself. And there's like, how do I finish this off? And she did a wonderful job of collecting the data and taking the pictures. And there's us working in the bunker. Okay. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Bill. So we do have a question or a comment from Sebastian, who's joining us. So he says that.
Of course he does. Go away.
Sebastian, do you want to come online and just if you don't mind, instead of me just repeating and reading what you wrote here, I'm just going to unmute your mic if that's okay, and let me just see if I can find you first, and then you can just come online and if you don't mind, and there we go. So you should be able to.
Good afternoon.
There we go.
Can you guys hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thanks for joining us.
I just stepped out of the bunker here to take a break to listen to Bill. So great talk, Bill. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, the comment there is just something that is actually not tested on cannabis yet, because it's a new system, of course. But if you look at the floriculture industry, there's a lot of studies that, of course, if you look at all of them, you always want to have the 10 that goes left and the 10 that goes right, done in different ways. But we do know as a general rule that the nutrients of nitrogens, especially the ammonium nitrogen, and also the phosphorus, does affect aphids and other pests on plants. The study that I just put there is just one of them. There's other study that go the other way. There's other study that shows stronger effect. But this is just a message, generally speaking, that this is what I'm dreaming to do personally with Bill, to link class together. Play with your nutrients for your deficiency or your yield. On my side, I just want to put aphids on the other half, and just look at the aphid populations on those. This is something that needs to be not forgotten. So that's my only comment. More research needed.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point, Sebastian. If I can follow up on that point a little bit, Bill, there's a, just like in vegetables, with cannabis, the light quality affects nutrient uptake and some of the interactions there between the spectrum that you're providing for the crop and the amount of nutrient that it requires. Can you talk a little bit about your lighting system that you're using for these experiments, and any kind of research that you've seen that really talks about the interaction between lighting and phosphorus levels that may be necessary? And the second part would be how that translates into the difference between indoor production and greenhouse production, right? Where you have supplemental lighting in greenhouses versus sole source lighting in vertical farms. But sorry for the long question there, but.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, we grew these. We're using LumaGrow LEDs, red blue spectrum, like 80 red, 20 blue, and we're normally around 750, 800 micromoles. And that is the thing with cannabis, that other than outdoor grown, it's pretty much always grown with supplemental light. Because you're right, with something like greenhouse vegetables and floriculture, only a few crops are under supplemental light. The Israeli study, they use 960 micromoles. So we are at fairly high light levels. And even when cannabis is grown in a greenhouse, it's always supplemented. And so we're not, that's an excellent question. We really don't run into low light levels, because at the moment, everybody is supplementing because it's such a high value crop. And yes, when you have lower light levels, you're definitely going to have less growth. You're going to have less uptake of nutrients. But overall, your ratios between your elements, I don't think those would really change. It would just be the strength, say the EC that you're feeding at. Your ratios really wouldn't change that much. So I'd still say the point that we don't need to be using as much phosphorus as we have, but it really is with cannabis in indoor and greenhouse production, we're always supplementing.
Great. I just want to remind everybody, if you have a question, please just drop it in the Q&A or raise your digital hand, and I can unmute you. So you did your trials with deep water culture. Do you think changing the growing medium might affect how plants uptake phosphorus, or the need for phosphorus?
Yes, most definitely. That if you're more into like a peat based, or I'd say if you're a peat based, a lot of times you may have to raise your phosphorus levels because you've got more CEC, maybe a little more tie up in the media. But if you're growing rockwool and coir, no, which is pretty much very similar, like the hydroponic system. That's where we're mostly growing we're mostly growing in rockwool. And I'd say the majority of growers indoor or greenhouse are either rockwool or coir. I don't know, nobody's really deep water culture. That's just very handy for research. But I would say the same would relate to rockwool and coir. But can I completely say this can translate over to a peat based? No. That would have to be run again. I would be suspecting you might need a little higher phosphorus.
Great. And you did talk a little bit about how, one recipe is not going to be able to feed all different varieties. Can you talk a little bit about that difference and some of the spectrum there in terms of phosphorus need?
No. It is like, it's very cultivar. I'm really trying not to say strain. I hate that, but cultivar specific, and you will have to. You can see just on that Israeli trial, and we did Cold Creek Kush. We'll likely have to do with another cultivar. And that's where I'm finding with a lot of licensed producers, when they can get to one room is one cultivar, or one bay is one cultivar, and you can treat like that, because they are. It's really, really not one size fits all. And you've got, and these cultivars can be so different, whether it's powdery mildew or nitrogen, that sort of things. But I still would say generally, 3 millimolar phosphorus is your upper limit. You don't need to be going up to that 120 and whatever. So yes, it's very much, and any grower knows, they're going to say, okay, here's what the recipe says. Now let's see what our drain is. Let's actually see what's coming back, that sort of thing. You can tweak it. It's like my students say, I have a recipe. Where'd you come up with that? Well, that's sort of a basis that you start, and then you have to tweak it for every crop. But the big thing is what I found from our research, from these papers, and because I didn't know, because I got in the industry and everyone said, you have to have high phosphorus and have to have high phosphorus. Why? Well, you have to have high phosphorus. That's the way it is. And so I don't think we need the increasing phosphorus. But the big thing is, it's very cultivar specific.
Great. So we do have a question in the Q&A here. It says above 90 parts per million, zinc and manganese deficiency can be observed. Can you comment a little bit on that?
Just antagonistic. Yes, you can start getting antagonisms, and yeah, and that's why it, maybe that's why our 3.5 millimolar, which is 108 ppm, maybe that's why it's growing a little lower. Yes, and that's the thing, you do get antagonism, so why put something in so high where you might actually get some antagonism? So if you don't have to go that high, don't. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So besides phosphorus, is there something else that you see in those recipes that caught your attention, maybe for further investigation?
Potassium, I was a mum grower for many years. I used to up my potassium when I was, if I was growing palms, that I upped my potassium. I thought it gave me stronger stems. Is that really needed? I'm not 100% sure. Like if you're growing tomatoes, peppers, and now we actually have a fruit, the higher potassium can help. I think there has to be, I think, did you even do with that on his paper? I didn't read all that. But yeah, I think that's something that has to be looked at, because we actually have done some of that I'd even say anecdotally, that we'd have our recirculating system and we upped our potassium, and in the drain, we just saw higher potassium coming back. So do we really need the higher potassium? I'm someone who is as guilty of that dogma as anybody. That I liked when I was growing palms, that I had a little higher potassium, so I thought it gave me better stalk strength. Or do you need silicone? So yeah, it's really nice these papers are coming out and seeing a lot of this. But like I say, and I use that in teaching, and where I went and analyzed it, I said, overall, actually I find the ratios fairly good. I don't have massive problems with it other than the price. It's just so, when you could do it yourself and you go to these LPs and they've got 50-gallon drums, holy crow, they've got the best marketing people in the world, these hydroponic fertilizers. No, the only thing that really jumped out at me was phosphorus. And I think we need to look at the potassium. I'd better do some more digging on that. Do we need to up the potassium? I think we need to look at phosphorus at first because of the environmental effects.
Great. There's a couple more questions. We are coming to the end here, so maybe we'll start with the first one here about many growers wanting to drop nitrogen during flowering. Can you comment on that?
I agree that you want to flush. I agree with the flush. That and lowering the nitrogen. You don't want a lot of lush growth, especially using ammonium. That in a hydroponic system, maybe 1 week of flush, and like that's nothing. Or peat-based 2 weeks. But yes, lower your nitrogen later on in the cycle, 100%. That you don't want a lot of that more lush growth. And the same thing for the flush. You want the chlorophyll out of the buds, so you get that cleaner smoke. So yes, I totally agree with that lowering nitrogen later in the cycle.
And speaker of cleaner smoke, there was a question about how the higher phosphorus levels affected the burn. Did you do any of that analysis?
Okay. I don't think it'd be the nitrogen that would affect the chlorophyll more, I believe, and I think lowering your nitrogen will, get your flush better and lower your chlorophyll. Phosphorus likely would have something to do with it. And well, that's why flush is nothing. Like you're trying to flush, so you're having no nutrients. You're just going water. It's like, I remember taking students, we take them to a cannabis producer and then we take one mum producer. and they'd hang on every word of the cannabis producer and just be bored out of their minds, the mum producer. And I said, well, the mum producer told you more how to grow cannabis than the cannabis producer, because they're saying you lower your EC as you get into flowering. Your last 2 weeks, you go clear water. Okay, clear water doesn't sound as sexy as the flush, but it's the same sort of thing. And so, yeah, because when you're trying to finish, you're trying to get rid of that chlorophyll in the bud.
Great, thanks, Siobhan. I think that's it for the questions.
Yeah, okay, so thanks a lot, Bill. I think this is really timely. We're seeing in the sector, obviously prices are going up, especially fertilizer, and that's hitting growers in all sectors, right? So I think this kind of research is important for our growers and important, hopefully, for the people who showed up today. So thanks a lot for joining us, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye now. Thank you.
Goodbye. You're welcome.